Hey, everybody, before we start the show, I wanted to let you know that I, James Introcaso, have a Patreon. This show that you are listening to, Tabletop Babble, you can support with your dollars. I hope the show is worth at least $1 a month to you. And the best part is it's a combined Patreon for this show and World Builder Blog and Demon Plague and everything else that I do. It's at patreon.com/Introcaso. That's patreon.com/Introcaso. And if you're already giving, thank you so much. I really appreciate it. This is Tabletop Babble. I'm James Introcaso. Today on the show, I am chatting with Ryan from 2CGaming. We are going to talk about all kinds of amazing stuff, from monster design to epic level options and all kinds of great things. 2CGaming puts out so much good content. I really enjoy talking to them. And in fact, what you should know is that 2CGaming actually currently has a product on Kickstarter. That's right. I am talking about the Total Party Kill Bestiary Volume 2 for 5th edition. It has more than 100 deadly monsters with ecology, tactics, and more. It is amazing. If you have the Total Party Kill Bestiary Volume 1, you know the quality that goes into these products. Plus, it's already funded, so you know when you contribute, you are going to get this awesome thing. So go check it out. It's linked over in the show notes for this episode, or search for TPK Bestiary Volume 2 for 5th edition on Kickstarter. And now, let's get to my conversation with Ryan. All right, everybody, now I'm here with a great game designer, one of my new favorite people I got to meet at PAX Unplugged in person. Ryan, for people who don't know, who are you and what do you do in the world of tabletop role-playing games?
Well, hi, my name is Ryan. I'm the lead writer and designer over at 2CGaming, a RPG workshop or workhouse where we create all kinds of fun stuff, mostly focusing on 5th edition. And you can find us over on Twitter at 2CGaming and our community Discord. We like to run Kickstarters. They're lots of fun.
Yes. And you like to make great supplements and books for 5th edition. I'm excited to have you on the show because there's a lot to cover. You all do this amazing work. I'm wondering if you could name some of the products you think people might know you for.
Well, last year we were nominated for an Emmy for Best Villain for our book Tyrants and Hellions, which is a book of villains and schemes. So people might know us from that because that put us on the map a little bit. The one people often come to us for is for our Epic Legacy content, which is our epic level expansion for 5e. People really enjoy that one. We just ran a second very successful Kickstarter expanding upon that particular design branch. And then the other one is people come to us for a Total Party Kill line of books, which are designed to be very difficult, very challenging, but like in a fair way, not like con save or die way, more in like make good decisions, win encounter kind of way. So those are usually the three things people come to us for, or we just sort of bumble into each other at conventions and start liking and hanging out and having a few drinks.
That's excellent. That's really cool. And you all do some amazing work. And a lot of what you're doing requires some pretty intelligent, informed, experienced minds when it comes to game design. And so I want to talk to you about that today. Do you see yourselves as people who fill gaps in 5th edition?
Certainly we make intentions of doing so. I would say in Epic Legacy's case, I wouldn't call it a gap so much as something we just thought was awesome and loved and wanted to do. But in many cases, yeah, we take a very thorough approach to 5e's design. We spent a lot of time reverse engineering the entire system to sort of figure out what the designer intentions were, most of which are theories until one day I finally get to sit down and ask them directly, like, is this what you were thinking when you were doing this? And then they can confirm or deny. But it seems like I'm right most of the time. And then when we reverse engineer it, we can look at the gameplay spaces and sort of say, like, well, here's these areas that feel underserved or aren't quite working the way they intended, or the meta is causing people to not use them, right? Like, despite what the designers do, oftentimes the way people play the game may not necessarily reflect the way it was designed or sort of the intentions. And we try to bring that out a little bit more. In the case of like our TPK stuff, a great example is just sort of like, it feels like, especially in 5e, like the tier 4 area of play for D&D just isn't as much as a thing as it was in past editions. It's always a niche thing, but this, especially this time around, feels like it's a very like low key thing for a lot of people, or just doesn't exist for a lot of people, and that was really surprising to us, and something we wanted to tackle.
Yeah, I think, you see a lot of research come out of Wizards that, like, hey, it doesn't look to us like a lot of people are playing these tier 4, level 15 to 20ish adventures. And
Yeah.
there's not a lot of content there. So it's an interesting thing. I think you all have done it extremely well, because I think one of the things that is daunting about playing higher level content is that by the time you get there, usually players are pretty familiar with their characters, right?
Yeah.
And
They
even
know what
if
they're doing.
Yeah, exactly. And if they've started, if they haven't been playing D&D for years, even if they started with just this character, it's like, well, I've been playing this character for months. I know all sort of the ins and outs. I know what's going on. So I find often that, like, you have a group of level 16 characters and you throw a couple challenge rating 16 creatures and they mop the floor with it, right? Challenge rating starts to fall apart for a lot of reasons. One of it being that the players are very good players now at this point.
Yes. Well, it's not fair to the poor DM who's usually running the monsters for the first time, and they've gotten increasingly complex. So, one of the things we did with our designs is we assume that the DM is going to make what we would consider like fairly significant tactical errors, which, like, we're accounting for that in the way we approach challenge, which is like the DM is not going to play this monster perfectly, because how is that fair to ask that of them? But yeah, when it comes to sort of the general 5e model, like, we don't want to compete with Wizards, obviously, at their own game, because they're better than we are at lots of things. But we also hate doing things that other people are doing. And if we are going to sort of be in a similar space, we want to make sure that we have an iconic piece of design that really makes people feel like we're creating something substantively different, at least in our approach. And which, I think everyone has a lot of important niches to fill. I'm not saying like ours is special or unique, rather just that it's really important to us that we don't feel like we're following what others are doing. Like, Kobold Press does a monster book. We wanted to do a monster book. Do we do a book of 400 monsters like them, or do we, make a fundamentally different design approach? And that's what we did with that one. Which hopefully people appreciated, but it's always hard to say. If people ask us, why was there only 100? And I'm like, well, there's a lot of reasons if you read it.
Well, so I've got the total party kill bestiary with me, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so let's talk a little bit about how this is broken down. I want to say this is a great example of learn the rules so you can break the rules.
Yes.
Can you talk to me about why this book is presented the way it is, and how it's presented, since the audience does not have the book in front of them like I do?
Yeah, so if you are familiar with our Total Party Kill Bestiary book, basically the premise is it's a book of CR 10 plus monsters, almost an exclusivity. There's like a handful of ones below that, and they're mostly there for like flavory reasons, but they're very functional. And the idea is it's to help you play a higher level area of D&D from people who really played a ton of it. And we did. When we were designing our Epic Legacy system, we spent a year and a half just dissecting high level 5e to make sure that whatever we built on top of it made it better and didn't just feel redundant or there for the sake of it being there. So with that expertise and experience and hundreds of hours of running one-shots and games and all kinds of fun stuff, we realized there were a lot of issues people were encountering, some of which were design-based and some of which were meta-based. So we tackled both of those. So we're trying to help DMs solve issues that they encounter while running high-level 5e that sort of are incidental, like monster complexity, how to build and challenge players of that level, how to make meaningful encounters, because killing players at that level doesn't nearly mean the same thing. But when you make a deadly encounter, it's supposed to kill somebody. So you have people, they're running a deadly encounter, and they're like, oh, this is going to be super horrible. But then it's not, because even if they kill somebody, the players don't care. They're like, yeah, revivify, third level slot, done. Right. And then the other one is just sort of tackling some of the areas in 5e that feel like it feels like the monsters don't keep the pace with the players. Sly Flourish has done a lot of great breakdowns as to like why lower levels are insanely dangerous. and then like higher levels, not so much. So we broke that down. And then each of the monsters has tactics, lore, ecology, treasure, and basically all these things to make these high level monsters feel like they're more important and significant than their low level counterparts. So instead of just making them more powerful, we changed the whole design of them to make them more significant in every single way, as befitting of a creature that is higher level. We especially wanted to encourage DMs to put higher level creatures in their games when they're beyond the reach of players. One of the things I hate to see is what I call video game encounter design, where every single monster that ever shows up is one the players are supposed to be able to kill. And that's like a very video game thing, right? Like just never put anything in the room you can fight that the players can't kill. And I love the idea of putting a monster in a room that absolutely the players cannot kill. And maybe the monster doesn't want to kill them, or maybe it wants to like, step on them for a second, be like, sit down, we're going to have a conversation, right? Or I'm going to teach you a lesson, right? And I like those kind of encounters. I think it's important for players to lose. It's important for players to feel like they're not the biggest fish in the pond at any given time. And then there's lots of little like elements that we put in there. We spent a lot of time thinking about why we did what we did, but that's sort of the general gist. On top of lots of unique mechanics, just because we like mechanics and we're very, very familiar with how 5e works and like to dig into the different little rules bits and find some neat interactions.
Yeah. So one of the things that I love is that when you look at a 5e stat block in the monster manual, and one of the things that makes the monsters great is that they never have like a zillion fiddly bits for the most part, right? They usually have a lot of very core kind of iconic abilities and maybe some attacks and, you've your basic statistics, and that's it. You're never dealing with something that is like a 4-page stat block. And when I first started getting into design and I thought like, oh, I need to make some high level creatures, it was like, let me pack this creature with every ability I can think of. And then wholly unwieldy and crazy. Every one of these creatures, even like the big legendary creature stat blocks, fits onto a page, or in many cases, a half page or less. And is like plays great and is incredible, which means you're doing a lot of creating new stuff, right? You're creating a lot of new abilities. You're not saying like it does these 16 things very well. You're saying it does this one thing and this one thing is incredible. What's it like when you're designing new abilities that are meant to challenge veteran players like that?
Well, generally speaking, I view uniqueness as a form of challenge. When players haven't seen it before, that usually means there's a skill curve involved with sort of appreciating the new mechanic and what goes on with it. So I generally like to, when dealing with high level players, factor that into the challenge. So newness for me is a huge component of what makes the monster hard. And players at high level especially have so many tools that if they're very good at what they're doing, they will find a solution built in. So generally speaking, what I do is when I create a creature, I build one feature in it that I consider to be its overwhelming, like this is the thing that makes it amazing. Because 5e is all about those high impact, fun to use abilities. So the monster always has usually like one or two high impact features that the players need to figure out and deal with. And if they don't deal with it, if they don't have a strategy for that, they'll have a really difficult time. And I want the players to work on navigating that ability. I'll usually build in what I would also consider two like very weak, 1 to 2 weak features or like areas of weakness to the monster. And those are usually designed to synergize with certain class mechanics or just general player strategies. And then between all of that, I'm usually trying to come up with something that makes the players feel an emotion and associated with the monster. Like I want players to feel angry, frustrated, scared, upset, disgusted, or intrigued. Usually those are the 6 different emotions that I'm going for. And I pick one and I say, okay, so this monster's design, the way it plays, needs to get this emotional response for the players. Like I'll often describe an ability like the monster vomits a globule of phlegm onto a creature it can see within 30 feet, right? Like if the creature fails a dexterity saving throw, it is covered in corrosive biotic juices for 1 minute while so coated, right? And the players are just like,
that's perfect,
right? And that's the experience I want people to have. Is I want people to feel like the nature of the mechanic they're dealing with is just like antagonizing them in some very specific way, or like, in some cases mysterious or wondrous too. Like I always like that moment of like, whoa, what did it just, that's amazing, like why did it do that? And you can't usually get that by just copy pasting the stuff WotC has already done, right? Because people know it, right? They're used to it, and that's fine. I think there's it's good to have those monsters that are familiar, but if you're trying to really get that unique, compelling high level 5e experience, you can go a little on the weirder side of things, and I always like to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. So I am a 4th edition fan. I like 4th edition.
Oh, good. Then you probably liked some of the things we put in there.
There's a lot of great things in here. One of the things that I love to see are every monster has a lore table that includes like a DC that would be associated with some sort of ability check related to lore, presumably like nature or arcana or history.
Yeah, I encourage people to not dump int
Mm-hmm.
in 5e, which is a problem. So we're like, don't dump int. This will help you.
That is really fun to have it broken down into these levels of like, well, this, but you might also know some more stuff about it, which is super, super fun. And then I'm trying to think of the best way to describe this. You have some like super duper hard monsters, I guess.
Yes.
Yeah. Talk about that a little bit. What was the design idea behind these monsters that are called out as like cheaters, essentially?
Yeah, so for those who don't know, in the book, the monsters are organized into families around a theme and a creature type. So like there will be an ooze group, which is the maleophages, the living disease or sentient diseases monster group. And basically for all of the designs, what we designed them to be what we would call tough but fair, in that like none of the mechanics the players would go, whoa, like that's not okay, like that's ridiculous. Except we made one in every group, that sort of old school D&D style classic level of difficulty, in terms of just like, it's intentionally designed to be really unfair. The way we thought that was okay, because obviously there's a lot of things that cannot be okay with using that monster in your game, and there's horror stories, right, from all the way back to 1st edition of those kind of things, is we gave it a stamp, a little skull marker that's like, hey, heads up. And the DM knows when they look at this book that this monster is supposed to be unfair. So if the DM is going to use it, they'll do so with the understanding that this monster will provide an experience that players will find unfair. Some players are okay with that, but we want you to know that that's the kind of experience you're going to get. Generally speaking, the mechanics are designed to be unfair. And we feel like it's important that those experiences still exist, but we think part of the issue is more in the execution rather than in the fact that they are a thing. I think one of the reasons people hate like intellect devours and shadows so much in like regular 5e is they come out of left field, right? You're fighting goblins one second, and the next thing you know, your brain's ripped out of your skull and there's like a little dog brain thing piloting your body. And it just feels like, your game just went from 0 to 100. And I've heard from DMs all the time, like, I didn't realize that would happen. Right. And I'm like, I don't want that to happen with this. I want the DM to know exactly what they're doing every time they use one of these monsters. So that's why we put that there. It's the TPK in the book, by the way, is tongue in cheek. It's not meant to be like, kill all of your players, no mercy. It's more just give them a hard time. Right. You don't need our help giving them an easy time. That seems to be a thing most people are able to do. You need our help to give your players in high level a hard time, because they're really good and they know what they're doing.
Hey everyone, we're going to take a quick break and then back to the babble.
Leave behind the safety of the Humblewood and travel down the Tangrip coast to the Bay of Palouche, home to both the Kingdom of Den and the Serpent Domain. But neither hold the true power of the Bay, for that lies in the sea itself and the pirate lords that call her tides their own. The dread pirate Captain Bluebeak, Tiberius Fang, Kin the Bladeless, and Gabrielle LaFleur, the self-proclaimed pirate queen. Each one vying for power over the very tides themselves. But do any of them really have what it takes to hold up the legacy of the briny bulldog? Tune in each week to find out if our little crew has what it takes to stand up to the pirate Pirates of the Blood-Soaked Waters. Dark Fortunes is available every Monday on iTunes, Spotify, and Google Play. Set sail for high seas adventure.
Let's get back to the babble. I want to talk to you about putting together the Epic Legacy core rulebook.
Oh, yes.
So you also, in addition to beefing up the monsters in 5th edition, you've beefed up the player characters as well. And this book is like a book that will help take your characters all the way up to 30th level, right?
Yeah, so what we did with the Epic Legacy core rulebook is we added a epic range of play from 21st to 30th level, again in the spirit of 4th edition. And in previous editions, we always loved the idea of epic play. I think one of my favorite and most read books, notably most read, not most played, is the Epic Level Handbook from 3.5, which is a beautiful mess of a book. Like it's such a cool idea, and I'm the kind of person who really appreciates bold thinking. Like, I'd rather people try and fail than like play it safe and succeed. I'm a big fan of people who take those risks. And what we did is we said, well, 5th edition is really clean at high levels. Like, it's not the most beautiful beast in the world, but it's better than it's ever been when it comes to playability in almost every area. Some 4th edition hardcore fans may disagree with me on that, and they may be right. But even then, it's a close second, right? Like, it plays super well. And we said, well, Epic has always been a beautiful, bold vision for D&D that's mostly spectacularly failed. So why don't we give it a shot and see what we can do and take all the lessons that have come before, all the like things we don't want to do, and learn from that. So what we did is we compiled all the things we didn't want to do, and what we had left is what we wanted to do, which is a sort of weird way to go about designing it. And then we ran a year and a half of community playtests. We went through like 4 major revision builds, and there's a ton of design like philosophy. And then what we had at the end was like a very playable system that people really were starting to enjoy. And we built a book around it with the knowledge that this probably wasn't going to be everyone's cup of tea, but sort of just as like this is cool and people like it. And 5th edition characters have a lot of space to grow still. Like, I like how in 5th edition a wizard gets 1 9th level slot. But there is something that I think you always want. It's like, but what if I had like more, right? You go on YouTube and like some of the most liked videos about D&D 5e are like 10th level spells, like epic power in older editions of D&D. Where did it go? Like, why isn't it in 5e? Why are characters so much weaker? And we're sort of like, well, okay, let's try and answer that question a little bit. And that's what we did. We also give the DM stuff too to help deal with that problem, but it was a very hard book to write, and that was brutally difficult, but it was, I think it made me really, really better at being a designer because of how hard that challenge was. I got to make 1,000,001 mistakes and learn from all of them, and that was really cool.
Yeah, I mean, that is a big thing to say. I will add a new third onto this game. That's not an easy task to do, especially when there is a lot that feels final, sort of in the 5th edition 20th level design. But there's also things, I've played a couple campaigns now, levels 1 through 20. And there is this like, we got our level 20 abilities. Cool. We'll use them for 1 or 2 sessions. And then we step away. And this helps that as well, with like getting to use those really cool abilities much more often.
And it should be said, a lot of this is also born out of what feels like a lore inconsistency with a gameplay inconsistency with D&D. So like a great example of this, I think, is Demogorgon stat block in 5e, his like official block, which is a very functional, playable creature, and I like that Demogorgon is statted. However, Demogorgon's abilities are not reflective of his potential as written, as described, right? In terms of what he can do, or but Demogorgon is the demon prince of the arcane, wielding godlike power, and he can get womboed pretty hard by 17th level characters. Now, when you think godlike power, it just doesn't feel like that means they're within striking distance of 17th level characters. I think that's the visceral reaction people get, which is 17th level is strong, but they're not like godlike, are they? And you know, you have Wish, but beyond Wish, right, is a 17th level fighter godlike, or is he just pretty awesome at chopping people up? Which I think, you know, is much more the latter. And Epic Legacy is embracing this, like, this is radical in terms of power. So we give things the epic keyword, which often has special interactions with things that are non-epic. So it's just like, if you're a epic person and you do this to a non-epic creature, like you cast the epic spell Implosion, a non-epic creature just dies. It doesn't get any save or anything like that. We talked about, you know, how to make, you know, Demogorgon's probably epic if you're using Epic Legacy, so you can't implode Demogorgon, but you can implode, like, you know, an adult gold dragon or an Empyrean or anything like that, because you're in a different playing field now. Like, you can just make certain things happen, and you just don't deal with some of the trivial, like goblins and stuff. You don't even roll damage; they're just gone. Goodbye, kind of thing, right? Like, so stuff like that was sort of the impetus behind Epic Legacy.
Nice. That's very cool. And I love this approach of we're getting into the weeds with mechanics, which is great, but there is this idea of story that is leading you through everything that you're doing behind the, you know, what do you want to make players feel when they interact with a particular creature or battle a particular creature? How do you want players to feel when they are truly now epic, right? As mechanically called epic, what does that feel like? And I love to see this kind of deep thinking that then is carried through into the mechanics of the game. Is so impressive the way it's put together. Everything is play tested too, which I think is truly important, especially when you're chasing we want the game to feel this way. You don't know it's going to feel that way when you put the words down on paper, right?
Yeah, no plan survives contact with the enemy. The enemy being the players in your playtesting arena being like, I want this to happen, and then the exact opposite of that happens. So, like, one of the funnier playtesting events we did is when we were doing our epic stuff. A lot of people were like, well, what about martial characters? Like, in older versions, martial characters never went very well for epic. And we're like, that's a very good point. So what we did in our design is we made all the martial characters really overpowered in the initial design, and then, like, tuned them down to be in line with the spellcasters, just to make sure that, like, that wasn't going to be a factor. It was definitely like a weird process, but it paid off because martial characters have a lot of fun using our epic system. And I'm like, got him. Like, it took forever, but we did it. The fighter was a monster. It was just so hard to make that balanced.
Oh yeah, I bet.
Yeah, it was horrible. It went through like 4 versions just because, you know, it's hard to envision what an epic sword swingy guy does next to the wizard who's like, I'm making a volcano today. What are you doing? Right.
Yeah. And you're like, I guess 10 attacks? I don't know. You know, like, that's the starting point for the fighter keeps getting attacks. So you got to do something different than that.
Yeah, we did. We gave them all epic attacks where you can, instead of making 6 gajillion attacks, you make one humongo attack that is, you know, you get some benefits because you're only making one, but it also keeps the gameplay clean. So you're not like, it's my turn now, you can all go take a 10-minute break.
Right. Yeah. Well, I roll a D20 600 times. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. We didn't want that to happen. So that was and
it doesn't feel super epic, you know?
Yes. That's the big thing we see on, like, our Amazon reviews and stuff. People are always like, this feels epic. And that was number 1 goal was epic. Number 2 was playability, and 3 was balance. And that was, like, our order of priority. And certainly we didn't succeed in all areas, but the one we do seem to have nailed is that it feels epic. And for us, that's like, yes, got it. Like, that's really awesome. So I'm happy with how that book turned out. And our sequel to it's going to be great too.
Oh, what is the sequel?
So we made the Epic Legacy Campaign Codex. We kickstarted that in August. I know what I'm doing. And when we did that, basically the core rulebook is 2/3 player, 1/3 DM. and then the second one is 2/3 DM, 1/3 player, kind of. It's to basically help the DM build epic campaigns, because we provide encounter guidelines in the core rulebook as sort of like how to put encounters together piece by piece, and our recommendations for doing so, how to make monsters and tools and storytelling elements. But we don't really say like how to make a campaign, how to make your world feel epic. So the campaign codex is there for that. It's told through an epic city we created, a inter-universal hub point. So sort of like Sigil, but instead of between planes, it goes between fantasy universes. So you connect Faerun and Eberron and Midgard and all your favorite settings together, or as few of them as you'd like. And it's this cool place for epic characters to go and feel like it's a place they belong. And it's like a world built for them, or a place built for them where they can explore, and the DM can learn how to talk about epic in a new and interesting way, how to present it, how to use it as a tool, and how to make your own designs with it. So we'll see how that goes. That's coming out in like a week and a half. We'll see how that goes.
That is awesome. This is so cool and so exciting that you are doing all this stuff for veteran players, for high level games. Also, when I hear you talk about like, oh yeah, I love to read the epic level handbook for 3rd edition. I'm almost like, I really hope that Ryan also loved to read Savage Species for 3rd edition, because I would love to see 2C take on Savage Species. Not that you don't already have plenty to do, but that was one of my favorite books to read.
So we are.
Yes.
Kind of.
Yes.
So we had a project that we initially launched, but decided to table in favor of ensuring our other projects were going to be the quality we needed them to be, which sucked, but that was the responsible choice. And we're going to swing back around to it. And it's called Dragonflight, and it's playing dragons as a party. So it's either for one-on-one D&D, where it's one DM and one player who's playing a dragon, or it's up to 3 players playing a dragon flight, which is we have 3 dragon subclasses: Arcanist, Imperator, and Destroyer. And depending on which one you pick, so Arcanist is obviously a magic-focused dragon playing up their magic ability. The Imperator is a leader-focused dragon, like cunning and plotting and scheming. And then the Destroyer is the, dragony dragon, because you need one of those. But the idea behind that is 5th edition has a very clean combat and gameplay loop, and you can do more with that if you provide a different baseline. So we're trying to create a different baseline playing monstrous characters, and if people really dig that, we can expand on that a little bit more. The big focus there is on telling different types of stories, because for us, playing a monstrous character is about the different experiences you can have where you can't get by playing a halfling. So when you play a dragon in Dragonflight, your leveling is based on money. So you collect your money and you can sleep on it and you advance. You age up faster when you rest upon your hoard, and you can only reach a certain limit based on how much money you have. And it's like, that's a different experience, right? So the players are going to be like, give me all the money, right? I need it and collect it.
Sure. Like a dragon. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So the focus is on different experiences. And with Savage Species, which is a hilarious book, it's awesome. If you're going to play a monster, we want you to feel like you're playing a monster. Like I want, for example, there to be an adventure where you try and stop hordes of adventurers from plundering your house, which is like a dungeon, right? And the whole thing is just like, you try and stop them from taking your stuff. Like, that'd be so fun and goofy.
Yes.
Like, get out, you locusts. You're taking everything that isn't nailed down.
And that's exactly what I want, right? I want to be able to, rather than play a party of ogres going out on a quest, I want, to play a party of ogres in a cave, being ogres, trying to keep the adventurers out.
Maybe your ogre mission is like, we must collect enough meat for the great feast. We will eat for 7 days straight, right? Like, that's an ogre adventure, right?
Yes.
It's something you won't usually do if you're PCs. Something fun like
But it's great because this shows your design philosophy and digging in here into this little sort of brainstorm thing that I threw at you, which of course you had an idea for and we're already doing something for, is amazing and is shows that like uh, mechanics and story are tied together, right? I think we often talk about things, even in the game design world, in terms of like, oh, I'm more of a narrative designer, or oh, I'm more of a mechanical designer.
Yeah.
And the two are way closer and more married than I think a lot of us realize.
Yeah. I'm a very strong believer that like the best designs are the ones that are a bit of both. Like a lot of people say I'm a role player, not a role player. And I'm like, why are they mutually exclusive? Right? Like I get it's difficult to merge the two, but I feel like a lot of times the best experiences people are talking about are often a mix. Like they often have that element. Um and I like in our designs to get that emotional behavioral reaction. Like I want to see a player not want to retreat because he's mad at the villain. He's like, "No, like we're not back. Like this guy took my shoe and ate it. That's not like that was my favorite pair of boots. Like we're throwing down. Like we're not going to back out from this." I love those moments where I'm like, yes, this is a stupid decision, but it's a good decision because it's like it comes from the heart, right? And I like to see players play from the heart, like mechanically and like role play ways. Like I love in a role play scene where someone says, hold on, I have a class feature for this. And they like dig into their pocket and they're like a College of Whispers bard. And they're like, ho, 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 ho. Like we're going to have some fun. Right. I love that. And I'm like, yeah, get that crunch in there. Or like get that fluff in there. Don't let them. Pies are crunchy and fluffy. Right.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree with you. And I see this thing sort of people often call the, D&D has divided its game into three pillars that they talk about. And people often call the, what D&D officially calls social interaction, right? People often call that role play. And I'm like, but there's role playing and exploration and combat too. It's all the same. And so I love when that happens. And like you just pointed out, there's mechanics in social interaction scenes. So it's one of those things that it's great to see the work that you are doing and the fun that you all are providing people by just being very thoughtful in your design.
Yeah, well, I do want to like give some shout out to the like major D&D designers, including yourself, whose work we do read like very closely. And that usually helps us in a couple ways. One, it shows us like they did a really good job with this. We don't have anything to say on this matter because they've already said it so well, right? Like with official 5e content, with a lot of stuff from the major publishers, like Tome of Beasts and Creature Codex. I poured over those because I'm like, I don't want to do what these guys already did. And sometimes when I had a cool idea and I'd pull through it and I'd see you guys do it, I'm like, like, oh no, they're okay, parallel thinking.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And we are very privileged in that we get to let other people blaze the trail in a lot of areas, and then we get to see the like secret passageways maybe they missed or chose not to go down.
Sure.
And we get to go down those paths, and that's really fun.
Yeah.
It's really quite a fun experience, and I am very grateful to the people who blaze other trails, because I'm like, well, yeah, like I get to answer a lot of design questions because other people did the work for me. They did the experiments. Then I can see like, oh, that's how that went. Cool. All right. Like,
yeah. Do you ever think about making your own game from the ground up?
Like RPG? Sometimes we've mused a little bit about like what a 5.5 would look like, or like a revised design model on 5th edition, just based on how the meta has played out, because behavior is reflective of design and community. So I think between Adventurers League and just sort of the way the D&D design model has played out, a lot of games get like very, very combat heavy unless there's a very like strong pushback against that. And then you get those like very role play heavy ones because they're very deliberately countering the pressure they feel to jump into the combat space. And I kind of want to make things a little more equilateral between exploration, role play, and combat, right? In terms of like I want a game to be a third of each, right? If I did 3 sessions, I want there to be 4 hours of each of those elements. or like, maybe an hour or two margin, right, one way or the other, kind of thing. And I think it can be hard to make that happen with the current design tools. Especially exploration is one which seems to always be really challenging for people to make into a compelling part of gameplay. We've had some experiments in that area that have sometimes failed spectacularly. Right. But like, how do you make 12th level characters explore? Right. That's a question we've asked a lot and tried around and got some good results, some promising results, and then some not so promising results. So hard to say, but that sort of, I'm in love with the 5th edition model. Like, it's so clean. And I can appreciate the fact other people like RPGs, but it's important to recognize greatness when you see it, because the team who worked on 5th edition are all-star RPG designers from all corners of that space, and they really knew what they were doing. And it's just, I still run Pathfinder. I've played several other systems. The only one that's really like speaking to me a lot is Numenera right now, with the Cypher system is just awesome. And I love all of Monty Cook's 3-5 books. I still read them all the time. So maybe it's just because I'm a huge fan of his work, but like the gameplay loop for that is super clean. So I'm not confident enough to make my own system yet. Maybe one day.
Well, I love everything that you are doing. Before we go, I do want to ask you about one other thing, which are your tournaments, I guess is the best way to put these, at conventions.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our TPK tournaments.
Yeah. So the one where you had to kill Strahd after Curse of Strahd had come out. One where you killed the Xanathar, right?
Yeah.
So talk to me a little bit about what these are and how they're put together, because I have never played one, but every person I talk to says like this is the most fun I've had at a convention game, is playing these things. So what are they?
We love conventions. Obviously, we go to them a lot, and one of the things we wanted to do was put on an event. So what originally Chris Gray, who's a writer in the RPG space, he doesn't often do 5th edition, but sometimes he does. He came to us and he told us about an experience he had where he felt like people he was playing with weren't getting a chance to kill Strahd in the Curse of Strahd adventure. So he was just doing a 4-hour gauntlet where they would enter his castle and try and kill him by the end of the night. And we took that idea and we said, well, let's streamline the experience so that we make sure that you're sort of on the clock, which was a huge component of it. And then you have to get through certain encounters, and let's make something interesting of that. So the way it works is you sign up, you show up, you can sign up as a group of 6 or a group of 3. You show up, we put you in a table with bunches of other people. And what you're going to do is you're going to run through the little module. And as you do it, you're going to face several encounters and then face a penultimate boss at the end. And the goal is to get as far as you can. The intention is everyone dies. All the characters are dead at the end, hence the TPK tournament. It's very literal in that case. That's not a tongue-in-cheek thing. And what happens is we pre-make everything. So you have pre-made characters you choose from, and it's competitive. You're playing against every other table in the room. And you win by doing the most damage to the final boss or killing them the fastest. What's neat about it is in between the boss, you do 3 encounters and you choose the difficulty of the encounter. The harder the encounter you beat, the more loot you get, which is specifically tailored to be useful in the module. So what it does is it rewards a couple things. It rewards understanding of the game. So if you can pick a character you know how to play and synergizes well with your party and you do so quickly, great. Fast turns. So like you know how to play quickly, throw dice, strategize, make good choices. And then you got to get a little bit lucky too. And what we find is that people love this event because they're competitive, but they're not in each other's faces. So there's no antagonism. I think we've run over like 2,000 games at this point, and we've had no incidences of like anything beyond like they just got lucky with the 20, whatever, grumbling as they walk out of the room. That's like the worst it's ever gotten for saltiness in a competitive setting, which makes us very happy because we don't want people to be unhappy. New players can jump in really easily because some of the characters we make have difficulty ratings where it's like if you're new, pick the easy ones because they're supposed to be easy. Some have advanced difficulty ratings for people who know what they're doing. And then we get to design a really cool boss at the end with a twist. So in Xanathar's case, you fight him or it, not familiar, and you kill Xanathar the first time. He rises as Death Tyrant within a round. It's like the big twist. So there's this great heroic moment where like, oh, we got Xanathar, yay! And then and then he rises, and everyone's just like, oh no. Right, and then a handful of people actually manage to kill the final boss, and that's a huge moment. We have like a leaderboard that we're showing. It's like top times for the day, and we give out prizes. Everyone gets a little something. You get like a discount equal to the cost of your ticket on our website. So it's like basically when you give us money for the event, you get money towards one of our books, and then winners get books and other fun stuff, which is great. It's a fun event. If you get a chance to play, you should sign up, especially with friends.
Yes. Yeah, I know. So I know Mike Shea of Sly Flourish. He did it with a group of people.
Oh my gosh, yes, he annihilated it. I remember they killed Strahd, which wasn't supposed to happen. I think he was our first ever recorded kill of Strahd, where it's like, oh, okay, well that can happen. Good to know.
yeah, I know he did it. I know the Shane and Ishan from Total Party Thrill, it's a podcast on this network, came in and with their group, their home group, and they had a great time doing it. So it just sounds like so much fun. A lot of people I know are clamoring for more. So I'm definitely going to sign up the next time I'm at a convention and one of these is happening.
Yeah, well, this year's tournament is Let's Kill Mind Flayers.
So yes. That is great.
And we'll be putting previous tournaments up on DM's Guild. The plan is to do a season where we make a new one, we run it, then it goes up on DM's Guild at the end of the season, and then you can run it for yourself or your friends or for whatever thing you want to do.
And that's excellent. Really great. Yeah, so you can organize mini conventions in your house.
Exactly.
Which I do.
Yeah, you don't need us to run it.
Yeah.
We can.
Absolutely. Well, that is great. Well, Ryan, as I have feared, we've only scratched the surface. So if you are amenable, I would love for you to come back sometime and we can keep this conversation rolling about game design and mechanics and anything else you want to talk about, buddy, if you're down. So, well, thank you, Ryan, for joining me. Where can people find you on the internet?
Yeah, so on Twitter at 2CGaming. It's not the 2TWO, it's 2C and then gaming. And then you can join our Discord community and ask me questions. Like if something I said today sounded really stupid and you want to challenge me on it, like come find me. I'll sit down and talk to you on mic. I'm like really happy to have conversations with people, even critics. So yeah, I would be happy to take you up on that and keep an eye on our stuff for Kickstarters. We have one coming up.
Excellent. What is it?
Excited about Total Party Kill Bestiary Volume 2.
Yes.
Which we have partnered with 8 major community writers to do as a part of our expanding network, and that's going to be very, very exciting. Very happy about how that project is shaping up. But there's a lot of people doing monster books this next few weeks, so we're trying to time it right.
Yes.
So we don't get annihilated.
Yeah, this February is a hard time for Kickstarters. It really is. February and March. Well, that's amazing. Well, you've got my money. I love the first one. I'll definitely be contributing to the second one. But well, thank you so much for joining me on Tabletop Babble today, Ryan. I appreciate that.
Oh, you're welcome. Thanks for having me on.
It was a great chat with Ryan. You know, people, Tabletop Babble could use your help getting the word out. Head on over to iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. You can rate us and all the other podcasts that you love. If you're listening in Apple Podcasts right now, ba-boom, you can hit it right there, pop on over. If you leave us a 5-star review, I'll read it out loud verbatim on the show. You can make me say anything you want. And also, I want to let you know, check out Dark Fortunes. It's a new actual play on this network. It takes place in Humblewood. It's an awesome setting where you play all kinds of bird creatures and other animals. It's really fun, and it's a great pirate tale. Dark Fortunes. Go check it out. It is on our website, don'tsplitthepodcastnetwork.com, and wherever fine podcasts are cast. All right, people, you can find me on Twitter at James Introcaso. Also, check out my blog, worldbuilderblog.com, which is all about the cool 5e and other game design stuff that I am doing. You can check out a bunch about Burn Bright over there. Burn Bright, what's that all about? Well, it is a original RPG that I created that should be releasing soon? Question mark. Anyway, go check it out. Tabletop Babble is a show on the Don't Split the Podcast Network. Thanks to Rudy Basso for founding it with me. Our theme music, which you're listening to right now, was provided by Battle Bards. Don't forget, RPGs are like sex. Hey people, James Introcaso here. Just wanted to let you know that this episode of Tabletop Babble you just heard was brought to you by D&D Beyond. D&D Beyond are, of course, the official game companion and digital toolset for Dungeons and Dragons. They are really awesome, and they are so much more than just a character builder. They released a really awesome encounter builder / tracker last week that works really great. There's all kinds of cool stuff in alpha. They are constantly improving. They have a roadmap so you know where they're going and what their progress is with stuff. Plus, there's all great free content. I'm talking about articles from great writers like Mackenzie Dearmas, DC, and James Hake, and I'm talking about those awesome videos from Todd Kenrick. So go check it out at dndbeyond.com. That's dndbeyond.com. Tell them DSPN sent you.